Morning, everyone. Great to see you this morning, and great to be here again. I'm Josh. Lots of unfamiliar faces, actually. Lots of new people here, which is always good. That's what church is supposed to be like, isn't it? When you've got new people here. I've just spilled water all over my notes. Look at that. That's really good. Oh, it's actually dripping off now onto the floor. Right. Anyway, we'll carry on. Now, you know when someone says, "Oh, say hello to people around you," you learn some amazing things. Okay. Who knew that Brian and Margaret and Liz enjoy a McDonald's each Sunday lunchtime because Margaret doesn't want to cook? I mean, look at that. There you go. That's your image for later on. Brian eating a Big Mac. I mean, there you go. I mean, I would never have thought that before. Yeah, great to be here. If you don't know me, my name's Josh, and I grew up here on the Sherwood estate, just up the road on Sherwood Road, but for the last 20 years, been living down in Folkestone in Kent, so just across the other side of Kent, and almost exactly a straight line, actually, Tunbridge Wells. I wish it was a straight line to drive, though, because you have to sort of go all the way up and down again. But anyway, we're here, and I'm not here with my children and my wife because it's actually my mother-in-law's birthday today, so they're celebrating that, so I'm missing that bit. I have to make up the son-in-law points later. But I am here with my mum, and my aunt is here as well, which is lovely. And my friend John's here with me because we're heading up to London straight after the service to watch the FA Trophy final with the mighty Halifax Town, who John convinces me are going to win. So we're going to be heading on the train after that. But yeah, it's great to be here. And it's always good to share God's word with you, even when I have just baptised it. There we go. We'll carry on. So we've got a strange story this morning, just read to us fantastically, by the way, and like all the voices and everything. That was good. Quite a strange story. Funnily enough, just in the build-up to the service, Richard sent out the order of service and accidentally put 1 Samuel, and I'd prepared 2 Samuel. And I thought, oh dear, hang on a minute. 1 Samuel was incredibly random. So I thought it must be a mistake. And it was actually a mistake. So that's okay. So I did prepare the right passage. So this strange story of David celebrating, David worshipping, really. And what I want us to do is look at it this morning as a kind of example to us of what it means to worship God. And now sometimes we can be a bit confused with what that means, and we think that worship is literally just what we've been doing this morning, you know, with the musical instruments and Rich leading us. Rich hasn't led me in worship for ages. I got back at Youth Forum days many years ago. Anyway, I love that. But that's just a very small part of what it is to worship God, to get your guitar out, to get your voice out, to stand with other people and sing. That is just a very small element of what it means to worship God. And in the Bible, we're told loads of times what it actually means to worship God. And if you were here the last time I came to speak, I was talking a little bit about this and talking about reading Bono's autobiography, the lead singer of U2, and how he talks about worshipping God by doing stuff, you know, helping people who need our help for many different reasons. Maybe they're widowed, maybe they're orphaned, maybe they're poor, maybe they just found themselves in some kind of difficult situation. And of course, those people are all around us, aren't they, all the time? And so to worship God means to help those people. So although we get this picture of David worshipping God, I want you to have that idea of worship being much wider. And we'll dip into this story and just pick out 3 elements of it, which I think can help us to worship God better, to be better worshippers of God. In other words, people that actually do something with their faith, rather than just show up on a Sunday morning and sing and go home again and have a Big Mac. Yeah, maybe. But actually, to do something with our faith is so key and so important. And of course, Jesus talked about what true worship is when he said to the disciples, let me read it to you in Matthew 22. It says, then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, in other words, God will say, I'll tell you the truth, when you did this for one of the least of these brothers or sisters, you did it for me. In other words, that's what we're talking about, helping people less fortunate. In fact, in our confessional at the beginning of the service, it finishes with some brilliant words from the Bible: act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. In other words, what it means to truly worship God, to act justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly. So we get this picture of David. Now, it's been said that this could be a little bit like David worshipping for a kind of like an audience of one. In other words, he's just focused on God. He's not bothered about anybody around him. He's just thinking, this is how I'm going to worship God in this moment. And we'll see in a minute that it is pretty extreme. But this idea that he's just focused on one person, he's delivering everything he's got towards God. It's like an audience of one. Often audiences are very large, aren't they? And I work in radio, and one of the key things in radio is that you talk to one person. It's quite fortunate for me because I've normally only got one person listening anyway. But you talk to one person. You don't talk to many people. You don't use like pluralistic terms. You speak to like one listener. Yeah, Alex will know all about this as well. You talk to one person, okay? And when you're listening to the radio, it's intimate. Yeah, you feel like Zoe Ball's talking to you in your car. Tomorrow when you get in and you switch Radio 2 on, you feel like she's actually talking to you. It's different to like television or going to see a big event where the audience is big and people are talking to lots of people. You know, if you watched Britain's Got Talent last night, the sense is that Ant and Dec are talking to you and a whole load of other people as well, and you're kind of in a big corporate thing. But radio, much more kind of intimate, and it's one of the reasons actually I love working in radio, because you can really speak straight into people's lives and have a big impact. And so this idea of an audience of one is kind of what David's thinking about when he's thinking about directing everything towards God. Of course, with an audience of one, less things can go wrong. When you've got an audience of lots of people, more things can go wrong. And I was remembering Emily and I presenting Grassroots Festival out on the Erridge Estate. How many years ago? 23 years ago? Something like that. And we've got a lot of people in front of us, a couple of thousand people. And I was just about to go on with Emily. And I realised, I don't know whether Emily even remembers this, but I realised, shock, horror, that the zip on my flies was undone, right? So I'm just about to go out onto the stage, and then I think, because if you're a man, you do check that zip quite a lot, okay? Just admit it, you do, just about you're going to go, so you just a little check, it's up, okay, carry on. This time, though, it wasn't up, and I thought, oh my goodness. So we're just about to go on stage, our microphones are on and everything, and for whatever reason, I didn't even think about this, but I decided to just quickly do my zip up, but I did it with the hand that the microphone was in, and the microphone was on, and right over the whole PA, as I'm quickly just coming out of the darkness, zit, this great big zip noise up, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, to just carry on with whatever I was doing. And I just remember being mortally embarrassed. I think Emily just carried the entire link, as she usually did anyway, actually. Yeah, I just thought things go wrong with a big audience, but actually when we reduce it down and we focus on one, less things can go wrong. So let's pick out three things from this story. Three simple things, it won't be too long, and then we'll be through and hopefully be challenged and inspired this morning. First of all, we see that David's worship towards God in this story is extravagant. Let me pick out some of the crazy, extravagant things. They're bringing the Ark of God, which is representing the presence of God, back into where it should be. David's built a tent for it. I mean, that's one thing that's extravagant enough. But then we read that there are sacrifices every 6 steps. Now, I've got quite long legs, right? But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That doesn't really get very far, does it? No. So every 6 steps, they're sacrificing stuff. They're dancing. They're dancing with all his might. That's definitely not very British, is it? If you're British here, you don't really like dancing with all your might, especially in front of other people. Probably not a very good idea. Shouting. We've got trumpets. We've got gifts given out to everybody. 3 things given to everybody: cake, some meat, and some bread. If you read it in the King James, it says a pound of flesh. Oh, okay, it's a bit strange. It's a strange gift to give to somebody, but there we go. So this is extravagant worship. It's over the top. It's like big, yeah? And I just find the challenge, is my worship to God that big? Is it that extravagant? Not physically here on Sunday morning, because I'm unlikely to suddenly start dancing around and jumping about, because it's not really my personality. I'm not going to get the tambourine out and go running around the chairs or anything like that. But day to day, am I thinking about what true worship is? Am I thinking about reaching out to those in need? And am I doing that in an extravagant way? Is it costing me something? I mean, imagine what this cost David and the other people, to be sacrificing all those animals, to be building a tent, to be giving out 3 gifts to pretty much the entire population of the country. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money. It cost something. Does my worship to God cost me anything? Does it actually cost me anything? Or is it cheap? Am I just going for the cheap option? Is it an effort? Or actually, is it just easy? Can I just do it without even thinking about it? And I think that's the first challenge for us to take out of this story. David's worship to God, to this audience of one, looking up to heaven, was extravagant. He didn't care how much it was going to cost him, but he wanted to just worship God with all his might. Are you and me the same? And I'm talking to myself this morning, because this is something God's been speaking to me about. Even since I've spoken to you last time, God's still been on my case, saying, well, what are you doing to look after other people? Are you doing that? Josh, are you reaching out and looking out for other people? The second thing, which is interesting about David's worship, is that it was misunderstood. And we get this image of David's wife kind of shouting down at him, accusing him, labeling him. You know, you read that part so brilliantly for us this morning. And we get this kind of idea that what David was doing was misunderstood, because he was actually doing something. You know, it was so extreme what was happening that actually other people began to criticize him for doing it, probably because they actually thought they should be doing it themselves. That's probably the honest truth. Sometimes there's human nature, isn't it? We feel threatened by someone else's good work, so we actually think, oh, well, let's just find something to criticize them about. You see, even potentially led to a bit of persecution for David. You know, what his wife was saying about him. But of course, Jesus said this about persecution: blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Isn't that amazing? Jesus said, actually, if you do get criticized, if you do get a bit of persecution, then actually count yourself blessed because of it. But actually, the challenge is our worship enough to even get the attention of people that may misunderstand it? You know, are we doing enough to even get anybody's attention, actually? So actually someone think, well, what is Josh doing that for? I don't think he should be helping that group of people because they've been doing that. We went on a mission trip over to Romania, and we worked with some of the Romani gypsy people over there. And when we came back to the UK, we told some people what we'd been doing all excitedly. And I remember, to my total surprise, people saying, oh, I don't think you should be helping that type of person. But I think, right, okay. Oh, well, they're criminal, and they're doing this and they're doing that. I'm like, yeah, well, you should see where they live. You should see that they're burning plastic to keep warm at night. You should see all these other things. And they didn't want to know. They didn't care. And they criticized me for taking my family out to Romania to help other people. And I just thought, well, what is that all about? But actually, you know, how often does that happen to me? How many times has that happened since? That's been the challenge to me, where I'm reaching out to help somebody and people are saying, oh, well, should you be helping that person? Should you be reaching out in love? Of course, we do. We reach out in love, don't we? Third and final thing. Final, that's a good word from a preacher, isn't it? Third thing, it was humbling. It was a humbling experience for David the king, because he was dancing with all his might. He was leaping around to the point where people were laughing at him. And in fact, after the criticism, his response is, well, actually, I'm going to become even more undignified than this. I will be humiliated in my own eyes, he said, because my worship is just focused on God. I don't even care what you think. But actually, it was a very humbling experience. Now, a couple of weekends ago, of course, we had the king's coronation, didn't we? What an amazing thing that was. John was actually there. my friend John in the Abbey. He was texting me saying, Lionel Richie's just walked in and stuff like that, which was very exciting. I actually saw John quite a few times on the TV as well. It was very, very cool. Anyway, you can ask John why he was there later. But wasn't it an amazing thing? Wasn't it just so amazing? I think some of you knew Dawn was there as well, wasn't she? Was it Dawn? Yeah. So it's just an amazing event. And of course, full of so much sort of grandeur. And, I've been talking to John a little bit about what it was like to actually be there. I mean, watching it on TV gave me tingles enough, But actually, all that was just amazing. But you know what the lasting image for me is? The thing I keep thinking about. I wonder if we could get it on the screen. Hopefully. There's panicked expressions coming from the back. Oh. Drum roll. Is it coming? No. It may appear. Let me describe it to you. Do a radio moment. You can't see a picture on radio, can you? That moment after the anointing, do you remember the screens had been put around so you couldn't see that actual bit? When the screens went, what was left? King Charles in his shirt. Just kneeling at the altar in his shirt. I mean, compared to how we normally see him, basically naked. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. He just looked like any old person on the bus or whatever, There he was in his shirt. It's kind of like very strange kind of medieval moment that just happened. And wow, there is the king kneeling before the altar, totally stripped of everything that classes him as king, when you see him, that separates him away from other people. Have we got the picture yet? No. I thought we've got a third person on there now. Almost. No, not yet. But anyway, I'm sure you remember what that image looked like. Now, interestingly, the end of that story, the criticism that he receives from his wife, she says, how glorious and distinguished was the King of Israel today, who uncovered himself and stripped off in the Amplified version of the Bible, which gives you a little bit more definition of what the words mean. It says, stripped off his kingly robes in the eyes of his servant maids, like one of the riffraff who shamelessly uncovers himself. I don't know what version you read, but it was even more funny than that, actually. But yeah, this idea that he was like derobed, I don't even know if that's an English word, but anyway, you know what I mean. And there he was, just naked, standing before God, kneeling before God, in fact. And I thought, wow, what an amazing thing, because we can robe ourselves with so much, can't we, that we're proud of. We can be walking around, being happy with ourselves, various things that we want to show off to other people. But actually, the true moment of worship in that service came at that moment when he was totally stripped back. Now, interestingly, this picture that we can't see was actually very hard to find online. I searched for ages to try and find this picture. When you type in the coronation images in Google or whatever, loads of stuff comes up, all the big moments, you get all the big, that's not the king. That's, there you go. That's Camilla having a little jog before the service. You get this, you get all the big moments come up instantly. You get the crown going on. You get Camilla, moving her hair out the way. You get all that other stuff. All the images come up. But I couldn't find the image of the king in his shirt. And it's because it's not the image that we think of immediately. We want the kind of Instagrammable image, the thing that's going to grab everybody's attention on social media, the thing that looks amazing. But actually, the most significant part, I believe, of that was him there, stripped of everything, just between him and God. And who knows what happened in that moment. I prayed during that moment that the Holy Spirit would touch him powerfully, because I thought, wow, what a moment this is. I don't know him at all, obviously, but I prayed and I said, well, God, will you just touch him with the power of your Holy Spirit right now? But the same for you and me as well. Will we be like that? Will we be stripped of all of our worldly trappings and actually just kneel before God? Hey! Well done. Thank you. How many men does it take to get there? There you go. That's the image I'm talking about, just in case you're not familiar. Hard to tell which one is King Charles, actually, isn't it? If you just saw that image quickly, yeah, you might think it was one of the other people. That's what I'm talking about, you see. But actually, there he is, stripped of everything, kneeling, being prayed for. He'd just been anointed. That's the bit we didn't get to see, of course, and rightly so. So this picture was hard to find, hard to get on the screen. But actually, this is the moment that our lives hinge on. Are we willing to also kneel before God, stripped of everything, just in front of him, that audience of one? Because when we do that, who knows what he'll say to us? Who knows what he'll have us do next? You know, you young people, some of you sitting exams this week and next week. I think it's just amazing. What's God going to do with you next? But the best thing to do, yeah, get your GCSEs and A-levels, of course, but to say to God, hey, I'm up for anything. What do you want me to do for you? And see what he's going to do next. I think that's just so exciting, because God can do so much with somebody like that. So to conclude with them, a challenge from this story, our worship to God. Can it be described as extravagant? Does it cost us something? Could it possibly be misunderstood and bring criticism because what we're doing is going against the grain of what culture says? And finally, does it humble us? Does it bring us back to just us and God? What if it did? What if our worship was like that all the time? What could God do with me? What could God do with you? That's the challenge that I really want to leave us with this morning. Let me pray.